I'm going to stop screen sharing, and it's over to you. Unmute if you want to speak, please, but I'm willing for you to challenge me. I'm happy for you to come back. I'm even willing for you to say, oh, I've not thought of that before. That was helpful. Has anybody got anything they want to say? Philip's waving again. He's always first in the queue. Good icebreaker, Philip.
Well, I thought it was fairly obvious that my NASB says it can be married or betrothed.
Right.
In the margin. But the fact is that as they almost certainly weren't there in the house with Lot, they must have been married. They wouldn't have been living with these men, to put it simply. That's my simple way of looking at things.
If I wanted to argue against that, I'd say that, of course, they wouldn't be living with them. They were betrothed, so they'd still be at home, but he'd go and get the son-in-laws.
Mm.
And the son-in-laws wouldn't listen. So, you know, it's hard to prove, but I think the text is that they were married already, and these were the two that weren't married. Anybody else? I hope somebody's got something. Christine.
Lot offered 2 of his daughters to the men who were asking for the angels to come outside.
Yeah.
So I think they were the 2 unmarried daughters or unbetrothed daughters. So that gives me an inkling that there would have been more than 2 daughters and that some were married.
Yeah.
And I think family ties do hold us back from obeying the Lord and for following him. I've seen it happen in my life and I've seen it happen in other lives.
Yeah.
So, and also ties with people in general in the church.
Yeah.
And I
certainly on the family ties, Jesus warned about it, didn't he? Any man who loves father, mother, brother, sister, children more than me isn't worthy to follow me. So family ties can be very difficult.
Well, he also said he brought a sword to divide families, didn't he? Again, to paraphrase.
Yeah.
Because they weren't ready the first time round. And of course, that is the message from the days of Noah and Lot. The church nowadays, as Jesus said, they're carrying on as normal. They're asleep. You know, I don't know many Christians in North Wales. Many of them don't want to talk about these things, about the last days and what have you. It makes them uncomfortable. And I do remember being criticized about talking about the last days. Some friends of mine said, well, our grandchildren are not saved or whatever. I said, there are always going to be grandchildren or whatever that aren't saved when the Lord comes back. You know? I mean, the fact is I'm not married. I haven't got children, let alone grandchildren. So, you know, I can afford to be however people think about that, you know. But it's obviously a huge problem for a lot of people. A very huge problem.
Yeah.
I thought my first thought would be, of course, there are a lot of possessions left. That probably would be what they linger. You know, it's a possession.
Yeah.
But then my question, I suppose, is of interest. If we go along the thought that there are other daughters, why did Lot only talk to the sons-in-law? Is it because the culture, you know, he didn't go and approach his daughters who are already married to these people? He only recorded to talk to his sons-in-law. Is it because the man had the, what's the word? You know, the authority to make the decision? He didn't talk to his daughters.
Well,
No, it's just a question.
the daughters may well have been in the same place and heard what their father said. But it
Yeah.
would be the son-in-laws who, as the head of the household, had the responsibility. Because if you think about it, when the angels said to Lot, get out of the city, we're only told they said it to Lot. He doesn't say the angel said to Lot, his wife and his daughters, get out. It just says he said it to Lot. But they all tally, you know, they all then were reluctant.
I don't know what other translations say, but it's the fact the sons-in-law, their reaction was that they thought Lot was joking.
Yeah.
It just seems an odd reaction to me. I mean, what did they know of Lot, or what was I suppose, the culture of the city or their background, that's how they took it. They just didn't take him seriously.
Right. They didn't take him seriously. What was it about Lot?
Yes.
In that culture? Well, they were men of the city, presumably, I would think. Right? So they were, but he had a reputation already for telling them they were wrong. So if I was going around saying, you lot are living wrongly, and then I said, but you can marry my daughters, would you take me seriously?
I think when you said they were men of the city,
Yeah.
They were outside the immediate family, just as much as Noah's sons married outside the family. One of the wives was still of the old school, and she was the mother of Nimrod, or the grandmother, but they married outside those that were of Noah's ilk. The son-in-laws would have been, as you said, men of the city. They would not have had the same cultural attitude. They would have been with the, I mean, it sounds terrible to say that they got the father drunk just so they could conceive. And of course we pay the price. The descendants of those children are the troubles that we're having today, aren't they?
Yeah.
Philip.
So just on a minor detail, as the firstborn, Isaac was said to be the firstborn, but Ishmael, although he was obviously the first to be born, was not counted as the firstborn. That's the priority. It refers to priority, not date of birth. Don't know whether that throws any light on anything.
Well, it reminds us of Esau and what he is the father of, and all of these people, as you say, are more or less the fathers of Islam, aren't they? And the current problem in the Near East and Israel.
Yes.
Whenever they went outside God's ordinances and married as they weren't supposed to do, like Solomon as well, and Samson, has already been mentioned.
Yes, Christine.
I noticed that one of these groups of people who came from Lot's incestuous daughters were the Moabites.
Yeah.
Now, we've just been studying Ruth in my group at church, and she was a Moabite. And the amazing thing that, I mean, this show, to me, this speaks of the mercy of God, that God can use mistakes and bad things to bring his purposes. Because Ruth is actually in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. She's mentioned by name.
Yeah.
We can have opposite characters within a family, just Cain and Abel, both sired by the same couple, and yet Cain was the murderer. That's me. Sorry, that's me.
That's you.
That's my sound.
Can I just point out, you're talking of God's mercy, 3 of the main writers of the Bible were murderers, weren't they? Moses, David, and Paul.
Yeah.
They're all murderers. Paul didn't actually murder anyone, but he condoned it, stood by. You know. So God's mercy is wonderful.
Yeah.
And Bathsheba, the son of Bathsheba, I mean, his direct line of our Saviour. Hardly a family without skeletons in the cupboard.
Yeah. Yeah. Mary wants to say something. I'll just put her on camera.
I am here. I'm listening. I just wanted to point out what it says in Hebrews 11 about Abraham, because he's listed in the people of faith, and it talks about him not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off and being assured of them, embracing them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland, and truly if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return, but now they desire a better, a heavenly country. And then it goes on, but it just seems to me there's a big contrast there with Lot, because he got his roots too deeply in the society. It was really hard for him to let go.
Yeah, look at the blue line.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the issue, isn't it? I think that's what I want us to see, that Lot was somebody who was too attached to the society, but the root of it, I feel, was he was happy to travel with others, not find God for himself. He was halfway there, and that sometimes worse than being none of the way there. He was righteous, but he wasn't as righteous as Noah, who really took God seriously. Lot was somebody who did escape by the skin of his teeth. He wasn't somebody who was at the cutting edge. He was quite happily settled in Sodom. He didn't want to put as much distance between him and Sodom as he should have done. And as we see things getting worse, I feel a lot of Christians will want to go back to what we used to have because they're attached to it rather than on to what God's got. You know, I was at a Zoom event on Wednesday night with local Christians, and really what was coming across was these people are just wanting to go back to where we were. They were not looking for something that God's doing. They just wanted to go back. And that's going to be hard for a lot of people. And that's what I hope I've encouraged you to think about tonight. Is where's your heart? Do you want to be somebody who's trying to walk with God closely, or just keep a connection with him?
Aren't we all in a difficult situation? My sister is living in a predominantly Roman Catholic country and having to accept their ways and beliefs. But we know this, we're living, Rome is, it's the Antichrist. Speaking, it sounds, it doesn't come across well, but we're living, how do we deal with that? Is that any different from the situation Lot was in? Are we tolerating? We're not. I mean, you're speaking earlier about people separating. We're just being not acknowledging the Pilgrim Fathers. They're wanting to get away and live without the law, the government, the powers that be, telling them to live differently. But I can only say on a one-to-one basis, my frustration or concern for my sister, she just thinks there's not that much, she won't get any teaching where she is.
Yeah. I think when it comes to living, Roy, is we all face a big dilemma wherever we live in a way. I remember years ago thinking about this passage where Abraham and Lot separated. And it struck me then that Abram was left to go to the mountains. Lot went to the easy place to live. And I think there is something about that choice of saying, am I prepared to live in a difficult place rather than an easy place? But sometimes that's not geographical. For us, we lived in Manchester, but it actually, God applied it into our lives about how we lived culturally, the choices we made. Your sister's in a Catholic country. What about believers in an Islamic country? There are reports, which I find sad, but I have to trust the grace of God, that some converted Muslims still go to the mosque. Some keep quiet about it, about their real faith. Others maybe don't. But how do you cope with that? And it isn't what we've all got to do. But I think in the end, it's where is our values? What do we value in life? Mary's just read the bit about Abraham, whose heart wasn't settled on anything in this place. He was looking for a city that wasn't earthly. Bits of the New Testament talks about things like set your hearts and your minds on things above. In Colossians, I think it is. Jesus said, store up your treasure in heaven. Because if that's where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. So when he comes back, if our treasure's in heaven, will we want to go around and get it out in the house? No, because it isn't there. Right? It won't be back at the house. We'll be saying, I'm heading for my treasure. And so I think a lot of this for us has to do with where is our treasure? And it seems to me Noah was somebody who said, I've got nothing invested in this society. It's so corrupt. I'm willing to set it all aside and be so strange to them that I'm building a boat on dry land. But Lot was much more saying, well, I could have a good life here. Everything could be, yeah. So I think that's the question. It's not our physical circumstances. It's where is our heart in these things?
I know this is going to be a bit off the wall, but you've taken the text. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall be the day when the Son of Man is revealed.
Yeah.
We're taught about the flood was judgment, which is the world is doing its best to make little of, reckoning that glaciers have attributed all the geological features, playing it down for all it's worth.
Yeah.
But the next judgment, the next judgment will be fire. When we understand that we live in, we're aware of the damage that UV light can do to us and cause cancer and burn up, and we have to protect against UV light. We're only held back by what's called the magnetosphere protects us from that UV light. The Lord only has to take away that protection. He controls the wind and the rain, and that just burns up our atmosphere just like Mars. There's no magnetosphere on them. So if we realize just how close we are sailing to the wind, is talk about skin of our teeth. That UV light, we don't have to worry about fires in California and thinking it's going to be something like that. We've only got to lose that magnetosphere, which is essentially gives us an atmosphere, part of creation. Again, unless we understand just how remarkable life itself is, the evidence is right under our nose, our breath. We need an atmosphere, but we're well aware of the damage that UV light does. I've not heard anyone actually make a link that how close we are to annihilation.
Revelation, book of Revelation describes the sun literally burning people just before the Lord returns.
Yes.
So he's upholding everything with the word of his power.
Sure.
The Lord he's the creator.
Sure.
And that's something I learned earlier. The first word in the Bible, the first letter in the Bible also means son, and the last letter in the Bible, the last person in the Bible, of course, is also the Son. And we see the Son punned as the Son of Righteousness, S-U-N as well, in Habakkuk, I think it is. So he's in control of all of these things. And what does Peter say? Peter says that the elements will be burned up.
Yeah.
And we have this whole thing about the heavens rolling up like a scroll, etc. He's in control of all the elements, and when he comes back, these will culminate with the fire, the word, the judgment, etc., the sword taken out of his mouth. All of these things that we know now as creation will be no more.
Yeah. There's no escape. There'll be no escape. It's not.
No, there's no escape.
And if we are concerned about the word getting around, we can't afford to be aware of just how threatening it is, not a case of making ourselves believe these things.
And as we were talking about earlier, the sons-in-law. Am I muted?
No, carry on. Carry on.
The sons-in-laws did not believe this. The number of people that we can all talk to on about different levels when we're approaching our Bible beliefs, and the number of people that will they can accept cultural Christianity, but when you start talking about creation and revelation and what have you, they really it's like, are you joking? You know, these things are going to happen.
Yeah.
They just cannot accept it. It's harder. We've only got to think about the whole Bible story ourselves, from heaven down through the angels to earth, through to the center of everything, the cross, and then back up to heaven again at the end. The whole thing is utterly, I won't use the words fantastic or fabulous because they imply that it's legend or myth. You know, this whole story is utterly sensational, wonderful, glorious. But it's very, very difficult to relate that to your man in the street going about their daily business. They're too busy for all that, for a start, you know. What did the philosophers in the Agora say, you know? Oh, we'll talk about these are wonderful things. We'll talk about them another day, you know, they said to Paul. So it's very difficult for us to, I mean, none of my family are believers, let alone I've probably got a couple of friends that will tolerate me blathering on about creation and prophecy for a certain amount of time. One friend of mine says, you've got 15 minutes today, come on, starting now. And that's it, you know. But he's been a friend for 20 odd years. As Roy said, we're in very, very difficult situation. And it's not about to get easier, you know.
No, but there's one positive that might come from it, is that as things get harder, some people will begin to question.
Yeah.
Some people will want to hear.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be many.
No.
But I do believe, and there are scriptures which I won't go to tonight, that says that there will be some who through the hardship are refined. In fact, if you look at Zechariah, that seems to be the course that Israel will take. That when all the nations come against Jerusalem, they finally, the majority of them, turn back to God and look unto him whom they pierced. And I see that happening as well. I've got a great hope, I have to say. We've got younger generations now who know nothing of the gospel. My generation grew up with a half gospel, a half Christianity. They knew the Bible, but they didn't take it seriously. So, we've heard all that. But the younger generations haven't heard all that. And if Christians can wake up and be in the right place when they say, what on earth is happening? And we can say to them, we can tell you what's happening. This has all been foretold before. Then I believe some of them will respond. And that is encouragement. But those of us who've been involved in creation ministry know, really, even in the churches, how hard it's been to get people to take God seriously. Every so often somebody does, and the light goes on for them, but the majority sit there without taking it to heart. They might intellectually consent, but they don't take it to heart. But every so often somebody does. And that's great. That was one of my greatest joys of travelling with John Mackay for some years, is that every so often somebody would write to us and say, I was at a John Mackay meeting. I went as an atheist and I came away as a believer. And that was made everything else worthwhile. And I think that will continue. You know, there will be openings, but maybe not my generation. Maybe my generation's too long in the tooth with their stubbornness against God. But I really do have a hope that as life gets harder and lockdown gives way to something even worse, then people will eventually start saying, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Come on, I've talked a lot there. Does anybody else want to come in before Philip gets another go? Ruth.
I suppose that just follows on what we shared just now about where you live. In that sense, our calling really, for some of us, is like to live in the world but not of the world. So then we will have the opportunity to tell the person next to us. And I think each one of us, I think in a way, I just want to, it's a form of encouragement really. I think in a way that is why I want to come to a meeting like this, to hear words like this and to encourage each other that if we take God seriously, we understand the time, and yet on the other hand, to really see that God is love and He desires all men to be saved. And so, yes, we see a lot of, things that is wrong around us. Not to lose heart, but actually being able to really reach out to the person next to you, whoever that God has brought in your life, to hopefully make that bit of difference, give that ripple effect. So whatever I heard tonight, I hope, it will be just to share it with people, have a chance to kind of just really drop it in. And I keep wanting to come on this sentence about, is it God made no respecter of person? Never quite know how that word goes. And so he really, as you're saying, Randa, that it is a heart to how we live every day. And none of us in that sense can say, okay, we are so sick tonight, God, and I must be the one that you recognize that I'm very sick with you. We really do not know. And so it's more like on a daily basis, have that, I don't know, humility before God, that am I living today as I ought to live before you? Have I lived even like what you have asked me to do? So it is encouragement that there are Christians that you waiting for the Lord to return, and it is frightening that you realize that there are some things who don't know, but when you talk to them, I don't know, they all want, they do all see, some of them anyway, when you all have the desire that to be godly, to really how God wants them to live, but they may not know. So all our duties, all our responsibility to just connect with the next person, Christian or non-Christians, so that we pray words of like this will go out and touch another life. And you may not be the most welcome person, as you say. Sometimes you say something that might be great, but that is where the Lord is looking for the faithful ones. I think that really is that He's looking for that faithful one. So I somehow in one sense I'm full of hope, because realizing that what we're looking for when we talk about the end days is to look for Jesus to return. So when we get love for Jesus, we are looking for Him to return, then it draws our heart to live the way. I suppose I can't even judge myself. I don't know where, in one sense, what we do is totally 100% right, but it is God's mercy, and then we can only keep seeking for more to be right with God and right with man. And so thank you for the work you put in, Randall, for us to have something that can share to the bigger sphere of Christians or non-Christians. So I appreciate that. I just want to say.
Right. Thank you. Right. I think we're getting to the point where we need to think about closing. So, does anybody want anything else to add before we? Lucille does.
Yeah, not anything to add really. I have to confess, I did not do my homework properly for tonight, but I found this very challenging and very timely. So thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Wendy, can't hear you. Unmute.
Thank you again. It's been very, very interesting and very encouraging and very thought-provoking. So thank you.
That's fine.
We can go it again, can't we? And
yeah, I'll make the video available. I'll make my slides available, and I'll send you all the link.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Anybody else want to add anything?
Thank you. Nothing else.
That's all right.